Hi, I'm Adam Stevenson from SSW. I'm here today with Dave Glover. Dave is a Windows Phone Evangelist and has been with Microsoft for 20 years. As a huge fan of Windows Phone 8, I'm very excited to have him here today to talk to us about Windows Phone development. Hi Dave, it's great to have you here.
Hey, thanks Adam. It's great to be on your show. Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
So tell me about your role and what you're doing at Microsoft these days.
Yeah, well, I've got this kind of nebulous title, which is the Windows Phone Developer Evangelist. Actually, in Australia, there's actually two of us. There's myself and Andrew Coates. And I guess our role is to get out there and talk to local software developers wherever we find them, find you. So it could be inside an organization, you could be a hobbyist, you could be a student, you could be a professional or a moonlighter, whatever you're doing. If you're a developer and interested in mobile, then we kind of want to connect with you guys.
Excellent. So if I'm a developer and I'm interested in Windows Phone, how do I connect with the Windows Phone developer team?
Well, by far the easiest way is we have a community site set up, and if you head to WP for Windows Phone, surprise, so wp.msdeveloper.com.au, and register up on there. You'll actually find my email address up on that site. You'll find my Twitter handle up on that site. And it's just a great way of connecting with all the things we're doing. So across Australia, we run a lot of workshops. So you can register for workshops up there. There's a newsletter. It's just a great way of keeping up to date with what's going on. We also provide tokens. Now, this is an Australian special. It's only available for Australian developers, certainly the tokens that I have. And you can come to me and ask for a token on that website, and it'll give you free sign up to the Windows Phone store, so that can be useful. If you're building an app and you don't have a Windows Phone and you want to be able to test it, then we also have some loan devices. And I can lend you out a phone for a short period of time if you actually go out there and build to go and test your apps on there. So when you go and release them, you're confident that you know they're going to work. So wp.msdeveloper.com.au is the place to go.
Wow, that's awesome. It's great to see the platform getting so much momentum. So I'm seeing more and more Windows phones out in the wild, and not just at .NET user groups, which is great.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Don't worry.
It's really awesome, and there's ads everywhere, and it really feels like the platform's picking up momentum.
Yeah, look, it's really exciting. Well, as a lot of people know, that we really did a reset with our whole mobile platform a couple of years ago. So we really started from zero, and to get the platform out there, to get the developer tools out there, to get the core apps out there has been both a challenge, but also a really exciting thing to do. And the really exciting thing about it is obviously from the consumer perspective, because until we have devices out there, then we can develop as much as we want without adding a lot of value. But if I look at the devices that have come out from the likes of Nokia, they've just got a tremendous range of devices, from the entry-level devices which they've just announced, which is a Nokia 520, all the way, I think they've now got a 620, a 720 out there, an 820 and a 920, and they all come at different price points and have different value propositions. So for example, the Nokia Lumia 920 has, which I've got here, which is my beautiful bright red camera, has just a stunning camera on it, and things like, and I personally love photography, so that's just a great camera for myself, and I've got a lovely screen on it and things like that. But there are also some great devices coming out there from HTC. They've got a couple of devices out there. They've done some really great work around creating some beautiful industrial design around their Windows phones, and Samsung have devices out there as well. And the great thing about these is that they come at different price points. That could be from an entry-level price point, like a $30 a month plan, all the way up to maybe a business plan with multi-gigabytes of data associated with it. And then the great thing as a software developer is that when you go and build this, you're targeting the Windows Phone platform. So you don't have to worry about every nuance or different set of frameworks or things like for different devices with different price points. You are building out there for Windows Phone, so for the range of consumers. So that's a great opportunity as well for developers to go and build for a whole range of different price points of devices.
That's awesome. I love the social media interaction and the way that my contacts are linked. So my LinkedIn and my Twitter and my Facebook contacts are all linked in with my phone contacts. I really love that. So what feedback are you getting back from people about their Windows Phone experience?
Yeah, look, it's something that was really unique when we brought out Windows Phone, which is interesting enough to see a few competitors maybe copying us on this now. But it is, as you said, it's a very people-centric platform. So particularly if you're into Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, it exposes that information and makes those kind of interactions really a very natural part of the device. That said, if you can't stand those social networks, there's nothing to stop you turning those off and not enabling them there. But that's kind of one of the beauty of it, is that we have these ideas of hubs. So I want to interact with a person. I've got their contact details, I've got their email their email addresses, and then I can also see kind of what their interactions are. So if they're a mate and you're about to give them a call, you can have a quick look to see what they've been up to, what the photos have been up to. It just provides a kind of extended interaction with somebody. Or maybe it's a business customer you're about to call, and maybe it's interesting to see what they've posted up on their LinkedIn accounts and things like that. So it's a very people-centric environment. Now the beauty about that, of course, is that we've obviously provided that level of interaction inside the platform, but as a software developer, you can go and leverage those capabilities as well. So so you can go and expose, you can go and build these type of experiences. You can create what we call live tiles to expose information out onto the end user's device. So really kind of things, but the things that are really people-centric nature of the device.
Excellent. So there's some really key apps on the platform. It's great to see all of the main applications coming around, but there's still a lot of opportunity there still for developers, isn't there?
Yeah, well, absolutely. As you said, one of the things I've been very keen to work with is to make sure that Windows Phone does have the key apps on there. So it could be things like WhatsApp, for example, on there. A lot of people use WhatsApp as a cost-effective way of communicating. People love Pandora. So my devices are buzzing. So Pandora just recently came out with great excitement. Twitter recently updated their app for Windows Phone. It is a beautiful app on the platform, and a lot of people recognize that as really a best-of-breed Twitter application, which is living on Windows Phone. I love listening to music. So there's Pandora on there, there's Spotify on there. I'm a personal fan of the Nokia Music, which is free music streaming of pretty much anything you want to go listen to. So I'll walk around and listen to that. There's great Maps support on there. Again, I point to things like Nokia Maps and things like that. There's also some of the key apps. People expect to see things like Fruit Ninja, Jetpack Joyride, things like that. They're actually Australian-based developers. So Halfbrick is an organization based in Queensland. They build some of these key apps out there. So it's really exciting to see those apps on the platform. Now, in terms of a great opportunity, well, of course, we want to make sure that the key apps are out there. So those are the things that when I'm a consumer, I walk into the Telstras and Optuses of this world, and I talk to somebody there, and they say, "Well, does it have Twitter support, or can I listen to my music?" All those kind of there are a key set of apps that we have now on the platform. We have something in the order of 120,000 apps, I think is what the last time we reported. There is still an amazing opportunity for software developers to get out there and be building applications and get those applications recognized. It's pretty common knowledge that platforms out there which have massive number of applications, it's very difficult to get recognized. So we still have the advantage that go and build something and make sure that you get out there and recognized. To give you a stat, I think it's something like on competing platforms, over 60% of the apps that people publish don't get downloaded at all. I've recently just run a challenge for local Australian developers. There were something like 40 entrants. Of the top 16, out of the top number one of those applications, he had over 18,000 downloads in the space of a month. And again, across those platforms, there were over 80,000 downloads. That was the sort of space of a month of people building applications, publishing. So there's absolutely opportunity out there to go and build apps for the Windows Phone platform.
That's great. It's also a lot easier to build apps for Windows Phone than the other platforms as well, isn't it?
Yeah, look, we've got a great set of developer tools. So Microsoft's always been recognized as being a very developer-centric organization. We appreciate that developers have always been part of the key equation of really making a platform succeed. So we put a massive amount of investment into things like Visual Studio over the last 10 to 15 to 20 years to building these tools out there. We've got a great set of frameworks. There's a lot of people out there that have .NET skills. So if you're already a Microsoft developer, you can take those skills and you can use those for building for Windows Phone apps. Take those skills and that code that you might have built for Windows Phone apps and use that on Windows 8 or use that in Azure or use that for your web projects or whatever it is. So the beauty of this whole environment is, one, you hopefully have familiarity with the developer tools, so Visual Studio, and you understand .NET, and you understand C#. And with that kind of combination, you can really go out there and start building applications. Now, clearly, you need to start thinking about, what does an application look like when it's mobile? An application that you build for the desktop or the web, there might be the same technology behind it, but you've got to kind of get your head around what a mobile application and mobile experience will look like. But really, we have those that capability. There's also a lot of support out there from the likes of people like Evangelist or Telerak. They build an amazing set of controls. So things like great graphing controls and things like that. Maybe you want to go and build an app which is looks at key performance indicators in the business, and you want to be able to graph that. They just create these controls which, as developers, yes, we might be able to do it, but I bet you we can't do it as well as what they have, and think about all the investment they put into these controls. So not only do we have great tools out there, developer tools, frameworks, but there are also a stack of controls out there which really help people to go and build these applications and get them out there really quickly.
Excellent.
So really exciting stuff.
That's great. And there's not a lot of startup costs, is there, for building Windows Phone applications?
Yeah, so we really have done a lot of work and thought about the market in terms of being able to provide the right set of tools for developers. So of course we've got the professional sets of Visual Studio, which an organization will buy into, and it's got the full application lifecycle inside them, testing tools and source control management and things like that. Refactoring tools inside the professional tools. But we also make those tool sets free of charge. Okay, they are a slightly cut down version of those tools, of the professional ones, but they are essentially the same set of tools. The same set of frameworks to support things like autocomplete and just all those types of things which make for a very productive environment. And those tools are the express versions of Visual Studio, and there's a free of charge tool for building for Windows Phone. And it's great if you're a hobbyist or you're a startup or you're a student and you want to play around with ideas and get on board and building these things. So that just provides a very easy entry point. As a bit of an aside, we also have just announced or just released an online version of our Team Foundation service. And if you go to tfs.visualstudio.com, for teams less than 5 people, there's free of charge access to the full application lifecycle suite, from source control management to item management. There'll be build managements coming through and things like that. So we're really making sure that no matter what kind of developer you are, if you're living inside an enterprise or if you're a single developer, that there is tools there that meet your needs and provide all those services around there. One of the other things is that if you're a startup, we also have a program called BizSpark. And BizSpark is just a great way of getting on board with Microsoft technologies. And I think it's probably you go to bizspark.com. You sign up there. I think you need to be a startup within the last 2 years. And we pretty much give you access to all the developer tools, the desktop tools, the server products, effectively for free, certainly for the first couple of years.
Excellent.
And I think that also includes access to Windows Azure. So you get a certain amount of time up on Windows Azure. So we really want to make it easy for startups who've got a great idea, maybe not a lot of cash, or not a lot of cash flow, to get on board with building apps. Maybe you're a student. We have another program called DreamSpark. So go to dreamspark.com, and again, it's a program geared towards students who want, again, not a lot of cash, and who want access to the tools, who've got a great idea, you want to get on board with things like that. So those are kinds of things that we do to make it easy for people to get on board and build for Windows Phone.
Excellent. The So it's easy to get the tools, and then we can leverage our existing .NET experience. So if I'm already a .NET web developer or a WinForms developer, I'm still using the same tools, and I'm using whatever .NET language that I'm familiar with. But the UI paradigm is really quite different for building Windows Phone 8 apps. What advice have you got about getting your head around the new paradigm?
Okay, so I guess the easiest way to start is actually to play around with the Windows Phone and just kind of understand its interaction model, understand the kind of the concepts of panoramas. When you think about they're kind of like a wide screen, and you kind of have a segment on them and things like that. Just understanding how panoramas work. We have another kind of idea which is like what we call a pivot. And a pivot, it's like the easiest, closest analogy is like a tab control, but it's not quite. But again, it provides different views on information. So get your head around what the experience is on a device. And if you don't have a device, go into a store and just play around with one. The other way in which, so that's just one thing, just to get some experience with a device. The other place to go is to the main developer portal for Windows Phone, which is dev.windowsphone.com. And up there you'll find access to all the developer tools and developer training material and things like that. But there's a great link up there which is the design section. And go into the design section and you'll find it basically, you work your way through exactly what the design experience or the user experience is for Windows Phone. So they'll talk a bit more about panoramas, about pivot controls, all those types of things. They've also got a great set of design templates, so you can download those. I think those as PDFs, and you can download things into Photoshop as well, and then start designing what that interaction will look like. And they could be as simple as like downloading the templates and sitting down with a pen and actually mapping out what those user experiences will look like. So I thoroughly recommend heading over to up to the dev tool, so dev.windowsphone.com, heading over to the design section. Now there's another place that I'd also recommend people going. I mentioned before the Windows Phone Australian developer community site, which was a wp.msdeveloper.com.au site. Scrolled all the way down to the bottom there, and there are actually a set of design resources down there. One that I really like is an organization where you could actually submit your application and then kind of do a it's not quite a crowdsourced view, but they will actually critique your app, and then they take that critique and then they video it and then they play it out to other people. So it's a great way of learning what other developers have been through, what their applications, what their experiences are. So I can't remember the exact name of the link, but I know I've plugged it down at the bottom of the wp.msdeveloper.com.au site. Now, if you're up on the latest version of Office, then PowerPoint 2013 has a new feature, which is a really interesting feature, which is a storyboarding feature. And in there, if you go into the storyboarding tab on the ribbon inside PowerPoint, you can drop that. You'll see that you now have all the controls for Windows Phone, and you can start constructing basically a wireframe inside PowerPoint of what the experience is going to be for your app. So if you're building inside an enterprise, for example, you need to get buy-in by the marketing department, or if you're a startup and you want to try and get some funding, then going into PowerPoint and using PowerPoint storyboard feature and actually mapping out what that application is going to look like, what the overall experience is going to be for that app. And you're just using PowerPoint. And most people understand, how to construct a presentation, how to construct events and and overall animations inside PowerPoint. So PowerPoint 2013 is also a great place just to get your head around what the user experience is going to be looking like.
That's great. So what else is new in Windows Phone 8?
Okay, so Windows Phone 8's been out for about close to 8 months, no, 6 months now, and obviously there's a new SDK, Software Developers Kit, for that. You can download that; it's a free of charge download, and that gives you the developer tools. If you've got Visual Studio installed on your desktop already, it'll add into Visual Studio. But some of the new things that came out with Windows Phone 8 was, from a developer perspective, was native support for native C++. Now, if you're a games developer, that's kind of really important because you want to get close to the metal. Now, there are also a lot of frameworks out there. So the obvious example would be Unity, where people go and build their games on top of other frameworks. So Unity is a C++. And it made it very easy for these other frameworks, which are built on C++, to be migrated across onto the Windows Phone, and that's exactly what's happened. So Unity for Windows Phone, I think, has just gone into beta. It's also available on Windows 8, for that matter. And so it was really key for us to get the native C++ for people who want to go and build native applications directly onto the platform, but also for those frameworks which a lot of games developers were using on other platforms, to migrate those onto Windows Phone. And in fact, there are some couple of key applications already in production that are using the Unity framework on top of C++. And there's also access to the new Direct 3D APIs if you want to do some funky things around 3D animations. There's support for new screen resolutions. We've done a lot of work around performance optimization, as you expect, with each iteration of the platform. So things get faster, be it things like long list selectors and mapping controls, web controls. One of the biggest requests that came through was around networking. What can we do to open up networking to make sure it's obviously safe and secure, but also give developers greater flexibility? So things like sockets. You might be building a game that you've got two end users, two consumers who want to play a game, and maybe they want to be connected up over sockets, and you can imagine an interaction going across Wi-Fi across the sockets API, and having those two games interacting very quickly. There's support in there for NFC, so maybe you want to connect devices very quickly, so you don't want users to go through all the pain point of going into Bluetooth and pairing up those devices and things like that. Things as developers we might find easy, but maybe the average consumer doesn't find them so easy. So we provide NFC support in there for the kinds of scenarios for pairing or identifying NFC-enabled devices. Bluetooth APIs. A lot of people want to get access to the Bluetooth stack, and maybe they want to talk to another. Maybe they want to have a Bluetooth communication going on between a game or things like that. Now, one of my other favorite things that got added with Windows Phone 8 from a developer perspective was these things called camera lenses. And I think you mentioned one before as well. And effectively what a camera lens is enables a developer to get in between taking the photo and the photo appearing into the phone. So you can go and add value to a photo stream. I think you mentioned one of your favorite ones was Translate, wasn't it? It was
I find that
the
amazing.
idea behind a lens, which is a translate. So that's a really cool scenario. So maybe just imagine, I think you said you'd love to travel, and you see the menu or a sign in a different language. So be able to point this Microsoft Translate application, this Lens application, at that, and have it translated, effectively overlay the language, another language, into English, or whatever the other language, whatever your primary language is. Just
and
amazing.
all in real time too, which is incredible.
Exactly. Yeah. So I love that. You'll see Panorama applications make great use of that technology as well. They're using developer lenses, and they effectively get in there. They understand if the phone's got a gyroscope in it. They understand their position, so as you're moving the camera around, they're adding value. They're looking at the position of that phone, and they're automatically firing the lens. There's another one which I think is called Blink, and what that would do is that will take multiple images per second And the whole idea behind that is it kind of does some analysis. Is a person smiling? Is a person blinking? And enables you to go and pull out the best photo out of a series of photos taken out of those. So that's kind of the end user experience, but as developers, we can hook into that really easily. So you'll see that they're called camera lenses. In-app purchase is something else we added in with Windows Phone 8. Now, the majority of people for Windows or any mobile developer across platform, most people don't make their money out of selling the app. They tend to make it out of things like advertising and in-app purchase. This tends to be the most successful way for people to go and monetize their apps. And so we've added in, so we've got a lot of feedback, so we need to have that in there. And so you'll find that now we've got in-app purchase support on there. So a very easy way for you to go and, for example, maybe you've got a game and maybe you want to sell bullets or something like that, or petrol if it's a tank game or whatever it is. So there might be assets that you want the end user to consume, to purchase, and things like that. So you've got durables and other types of assets maybe which deplete over time over a game. So things like that, really kind of very cool. Another one which I really loved, and this is particularly relevant in Australia, and I suspect it's true of a lot of countries, certainly in New South Wales. I think if you've even seen touching your phone while you're driving, that's an automatic, I think it's like $1,000 fine. Oh, wow. So we want to go and build applications which don't require us to be touching them. So things like speech APIs have been added in Windows Phone 8. So it's now very easy to add speech to your applications. And you can either make it free form or you can constrain it. And there was a great app that was done in a recent App Fest, which I think was the winner of an App Fest run here in Sydney. They actually did a squash scoring application. So the idea was that you'd leave your phone in the corner of the squash court, and then it would do the scoring for you. So you'd call out whose particular point was, and you call out a certain set of commands, and it would do automatic scoring for you. So that was a great example. Yeah. It's a very cool app. But again, just you're driving, you don't want to be talking, don't want to be touching your phone, you want to be concentrating on it. But so you can now talk to your device, you can talk to your application. So very easy ways of enabling your application for speech, which is a seriously cool scenario. Another thing that we added in for enterprise was into Windows Phone was for enterprise support. And I can't remember if we mentioned this already, but the organizations said to us, look, we've got these applications out there that we want to be able to manage ourselves and deploy just to the devices that we manage inside the organization. So we don't want our applications to be going out into the general store. And we now have a way in which organizations can effectively enroll a certificate and then deploy that certificate out to a subset of phones just managed within their organization, and then sign an application with that certificate, and then deploy that application out to the devices that are enrolled into the organization, and then have that application installed onto the device. But that enables you to control that distribution of that application. That application will only install onto the devices that have that certificate enrolled into it. So again, just a really interesting scenarios. And organizations, they can deploy it over email or over SD card or over a SharePoint site or a website or things like that. So it gives organizations a lot of flexibility in terms of being able to go and build those applications and deploy it. And another one, which this is probably the last one, because there's a stack of them and I could probably go on forever, but I'm not going to, is location. And we had a lot of requests to say, look, we need an API that enables our application when they're running in the background to still be location aware. And as consumers, we've probably seen those kind of applications out there, things like, applications which track how far you've walked or things like that. And you want those applications to be running in the background. But if you think about other scenarios, maybe you're building something for a parcel delivery business, and you want to do some work around, where is that truck at the moment, what packages have been delivered off, maybe there's a new job that needs to be done, and I need to understand where that truck is and where they're going to, and you can do some, some magic around automatic rerouting of that truck to go and deliver a package or go and pick up a package or whatever it might be. So things like that are really kind of key. So there's a lot of support that we put it into Windows Phone 8 that we knew we had to. Developers basically requested it, but we also knew to be competitive as well and create all these scenarios that consumers want and developers want to go and build. So a lot of that was really about Windows 8 was making sure we got those services into the device.
Wow, that's excellent. What I really want to do though is when I have a great idea, I want to build a Windows 8 app to target Windows 8 users, but I also want to target Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 at the same time. So what's the story about building a new modern application and getting the most reuse out of my code?
Yeah, well, look, that's a really exciting opportunity, and we're already seeing people. I guess the easiest way to describe these like companion apps. Either that's the primaries on the phone or primaries on Windows 8. And the beauty of it is the technology is fundamentally the same. The developer tools are the same. There are still some differences in the implementations on the phone versus Windows 8. So a lot of the kind of best practices are really about separating out your application logic into different projects inside Visual Studio, and then building the presentation logic, and then not magically, but inside Visual Studio, linking those application logics to the presentation logic. So the whole concept is you really minimize the amount of code that you have to go and build twice across their platforms. Now, there's some really good content on this because this is obviously a fairly hot topic. It's a question I get asked a lot. There's some really great content sitting up on channel9.msdn.com. And if you go up to that portal and go to the Windows, go and browse to Windows Phone, you'll find there's a whole lot of content up there, some of the very new content as well, around best practices for building for Windows 8 and for building Windows Phone. So absolutely go up there, go and check out those. But it fundamentally comes down to making sure you factor out your projects to keep the presentation layer for Windows Phone, presentation layer for Windows 8, and then a common core of application logic that you can share across both those projects. So that's fundamentally what it's about.
Awesome. What if I want to take it the next step though and I want to build for Android and iOS as well?
Yeah, well, and it's probably quite often the other way around actually, is that people are saying, look, we've got code out there, we're thinking about building for iPhone and Android, and look, we'd like to go and build for Windows Phone as well. So to maximize the reach. Now, a lot of people balk at that idea because it's an expensive proposition and they've got to get their heads around that. And it's a question I get asked a lot. And look, there's some fantastic technologies out there now that are really starting to mature that really help a developer go and build across those platforms. And I guess the essential thing about that is to start with that concept in my head, in your head. So think about, okay, I want to go and do reach. There's always going to be multiple platforms out there. What's a smart way of doing that? And particularly if you're a .NET and C# developer, there's some really great ways of doing that. So there's an organization called Xamarin. Head up to their website. It's spelled xamarin.com. And this is actually an organization and technology which came out of the Mono project, which was really about an open source implementation of the .NET C# and the .NET framework on Linux, was where it really came from. In fact, it wasn't on Linux, it was on FreeBSD. And they actually took that technology, bought that technology, and out of that have come another couple of other projects. The first one being Monodroid, which is the .NET framework and C# implementation on Android, and also MonoTouch, which is again the .NET and C# implementations of those technologies on the iOS, so iPhone and iPad technologies. So the beauty of using the Xamarin technology is it means that you can go and again build your application logic in C# on the .NET framework and build that once, and then merge that application logic into the more platform specific, so things like the presentation layers of those applications. Because the beauty of this is if you're building for Windows Phone, you can build it to an application which looks like it belongs on Windows Phone. If you're building for iPhone, you can again build the application logic in C# and .NET, but surface that application so it looks like it belongs on the iPhone or Android. So the beauty of this is it gives you both great code reuse, but also the ability to have your application look like it belongs on that platform. And that's one of the fundamental things we find about Windows Phone, is you've got to go and build an application which looks like it belongs on there, because the end users want that technology. They kind of got that experience in doing that. So Xamarin, I should say, they have a free of charge, something called Xamarin Studio. So if you head up to Xamarin.com, you can download that. They have like a tiered set of scaling of pricing. So Xamarin Studio enables you to go and build across these platforms. If you're building for iPhone and iOS platforms, you need to have a Mac out there because you need to compile on the native platform. But if you're building for Android and Windows Phone, you can compile those up on Windows platform. They also have an add-in for Visual Studio, and that's kind of geared probably a bit towards more professional developers or enterprises who are building applications and they want to be able to support a range of platforms out there. So Xamarin, I thoroughly recommend that. In fact, I've been talking to a couple of organizations the last week or so who have actually gone live on those technologies. 2 Australian-based organizations have gone live on the Xamarin technology.
Excellent.
Now another popular cross-platform technology, and it's more of a web-centric technology, and that's PhoneGap. And the whole concept behind PhoneGap is it provides effectively a container for your HTML, CSS, JavaScript-based application. So the application kind of lives as a native app inside a container on the platform. But they provide a set of services which are kind of common across platform. So that means if I want to get access to geolocation, for example, and I'm building for iPhone, for Android, and Windows Phone, they have a standard set of web-centric APIs that you can get at to enable your application to have that common set of functionality across those platforms. So PhoneGap is again a great way in which you can go and build for cross-platform as well. So look at Xamarin. I love Xamarin because you're building for a native experience. It's going to be a consistent experience across those platforms in terms of performance. PhoneGap, again, a great solution. It's more of a web-centric, and it relies on the web technology that's underpinning the particular platforms that you're going to deploy that application. And they will have different performance characteristics and things like that. So again, that's just something you need to be aware of when using PhoneGap. But there are other solutions out there, but that's certainly the two that we talk about most.
Awesome. So once I've built my new app for Windows Phone, I'm all excited about it and I've published it into the store, what can I do to raise my app visibility and get some downloads?
Yeah, well, that's a question, again, I get asked a lot. And there's some things that you can do to help yourself, and there's some things that we can do to help you. The thing to do to help yourself is clearly to go and build an app experience that looks like it belongs on the platform, and that you've done a lot of work around making an application function beautifully. And we all know when we look at an application, it doesn't matter what platform it is, you go into an application and you think, man, that's a thing of beauty. Someone's actually thought about it. They've thought about the interaction model, thought about transitions. They've just kind of got the act together for the app. And that counts for a lot, just in terms of creating a compelling app that looks like it belongs there and looks like something that we want to use. And people say, check this app out. It's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. So things like that you can do just to help yourself. And what happens is in the Windows Phone store, there are people out there who are looking at the apps as they come through, and they are looking for things of beauty as well. And they will take those applications and they will feature them. So things like that can do to help yourself. Now, there's another thing that you can do to help yourself, and I have to confess I'm a bit slack in this category myself. But when you go and upload an application up onto the phone store, there's an option in there which is to create a panorama background. And that panorama, it's an optional thing. We're all up against the wall in terms of time, and it's optional, so we jump over that. But if you go and create an image, and we're looking again for beautiful images, things that are going to attract people's attention, And the market team, the phone team, the Windows Phone store team, they look at these images and they're looking for things of beauty as well. And they will use those panoramas to live in the back of the store app on the device. And the things like that. So just think about the marketing of your app. The store panorama backgrounds are great things for capturing people's attention. The store love it. The store team love it because it captures their attention and you're more likely to get featured. So just things like that you can do to help yourself. Other stuff that works well to your advantage if you're building an app is, again, take advantage of the platform. Things like panoramas, things like pivots, things that look like they belong on there. Live tiles, so making sure your application is exposing information that I want as an end user. And things like that will capture people's attention. They will capture the curators of the store and say, oh, that's great. Look, it's exposing information out that the end users like to be thinking is relevant. You can also, within your application, you can create pinpoints. Let's say you've got a book application. Like the great an application that uses take this to great effect is things like the Amazon application. You can pin not only the application, but you can pin content within that application. I might be reading a book and I want to go and pin the particular book that I'm reading to the front screen of my app. And you can do that within your application. So just think about things like that. And if you think you've got a great application that really is kind of feature-worthy, then hit up the Australian developers, developer evangelists. So myself, so I'm dglover@microsoft.com, and Andrew Coates. You can find our contact details up on the Windows Phone Australia Developer Community site, and say, hey, look, I've got this great application. Can you help me get it featured? And we'll take a look at it, and it's a nomination process, and we can push that up to the phone team, and invariably they'll come back to say, hey, look, we love that app. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Yes, we'll schedule that to be featured. And being featured adds a huge amount of value to you getting downloads for your application. So just think about what you can do to market your application, and think about how you can help yourself. And then also, feel free to come and hit us up and say, hey, look, I've got this great application. Can you do that? Can you help me get that featured?
Wow, that's awesome. I'm really excited about building a Windows Phone app and connecting with other developers and talking to other developers about building Windows Phone 8 apps. Tell me a bit about the community around Windows Phone 8 in Australia.
Okay, so in Australia, and I think Australians are just great for this. You probably can tell by my accent, I'm not necessarily local, but I'm pretty local nowadays. But one of the things that really struck me about Australia is there's this great community and people want to get involved with the community. So there's a great site called WP Down Under, and that is recognized as being one of the biggest Windows Phone blog sites. Check that out, subscribe to it, look at the feeds, just keep up to date with it. There's another great site out there called Peter's Kitchen. And Peter's Kitchen, again, is a great blogging site. It's kind of Australian-centric content as well. And just a great way of keeping up to date with what's going on. Now, one of the other sites which I just love, and I always plug it as much as I can, so I'm going to plug it again, is another site called Developed Down Under. And this really came out of a community initiative from Australian developers saying, what can we do to help Australian developers and their apps get greater recognition? And effectively what it is I go up to Develop Down Under, and I can register my app that is Australian-centric content in it, register up there, and I think there's something like over 200 publishers of apps sitting up on that site now. And there's an app that you can download onto your phone, which is called Develop Down Under. And in there, you can go through the various categories and look at the applications which are Australian-centric content. So that's just a great community initiative in terms of being able to connect with other Australian developers and find out what's going on in the local community, get your applications, get a bit more focus on the applications that you've built that are Australian content. And without a plug, another plug is really, if you're interested in phone development, Windows Phone development in Australia, then absolutely sign up onto wp.msdeveloper.com.au. And as I said, I've got tokens out there that you can use for free of charge registration. You'll find out about workshops. I've got a getting started section. So over the last 2 years I've been doing this, I get asked a lot of questions, and surprise, surprise, are typically the same questions. And you'll find that up on the Getting Started tab, I've been through and hopefully categorized reasonably well. So sometimes I'll look at it, I think I can do a better job. But you'll find all the resources that I thought, hey, that's great. I'm a designer. What are all the designer resources? I'm a developer. What are all the designer resources? I've kind of got things like gotchas. You know, I've got stuck on this. Hey, look, to give you an example, when you go up and register on the Windows Phone, I can register as a person or as a company. And a lot of people say, oh, they're going to register a company. If you register as a company, there's a greater onus on you to go and prove your identity. And maybe that's not what you really meant. But if you go and register as a company, you can't change it to a personal. So those are kind of gotchas, and I make sure I highlight those things. I get asked them all the time, and people then go, oh, I don't believe it. I've just, registered as a company. I should have done as personal. And you can't change it. So I try and pick out the gotchas in there. But just go through, there's training kits, getting started, training material, all those types of things. The Get Started tab of the wp.msdeveloper.com.au is a great set of resources just for like getting started. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for joining us here today. I'm looking forward to walking around with the Windows Phone in my pocket with apps I've written on it myself.
Absolutely. Now, you haven't done anything yet, have you? Now, I think you did say this, so I am looking forward to seeing some apps that you built.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.